going to say good morning, but it is good afternoon now, isn't it? Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We're here to talk about and really launch the STP Clinical Microbiology Curriculum for 2023. I'm just going to talk slowly for a moment or two, just to give people a chance to join us if they wish to. So I'm Chris Fisher and I look after the curriculum for the National School. I'm joined by Rob Shorten this morning. I think needs no introduction, but go ahead, Rob.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Shorten. I'm a consultant clinical scientist at Lancashire Teaching Hospitals up at Royal Preston, and I'm the chair of the ACB Microbiology Professional Group, and I've been the lead editor for this process.
Thanks, Rob. I will get us underway in that case. We're also joined by our head of school, Professor Bernie Ferry, who I'll ask to say a few words in just a few moments. So I'm going to just make a start this morning. So for this webinar, we're going to really talk about the launch of the updated microbiology curriculum. So we're going to spend a few minutes just on that for a moment. Rob's going to talk about the curriculum content from the scientific side of things. I'm going to talk a little bit about planning for working with the new curriculum and some of the structural changes that we've made. I'm going to let you know where you can find more information on the new curricula, and we're going to spend a couple of minutes answering any questions that you might have at the end of the session. So just to make you aware, we are recording today's session. It will be on the website in due course if there's anybody else that you think this will be useful for. Your camera and your microphone have been disabled for the duration of the presentation, but we will take questions from the room later on. So just to make you aware, you will be recorded if you are on screen. The chat function is open, however, so if you want to pop any questions in there as we're going through the session this morning, you're very welcome to do so, and we'll try and answer those later on for you. So, without further more ado, the Clinical Microbiology curriculum for 2023 is now available on the Curriculum Library for you. So you are pride of place in the 2023 tab and the Curriculum Library in the STP section for the moment. You will be joined by the other specialties before too long, but that curriculum is now available and ready for you to have a look at. And I'm actually genuinely excited to be able to say this today, because this is a combination of a huge amount of work over the last couple of years. So it's really pleasing to be able to say that. I'm just going to talk briefly about the process that we took to get to this point. So you might remember the STP Improvement Review, which concluded back in 2018. So hopefully many of you had an opportunity to input to that review. It was the first and the biggest systematic review of the STP, just to see how things were going. We used all the feedback from that to feed forward into the STP Curriculum Content Review, helped us work out what we needed to look at within the STP curriculum and within the STP programme. And we used that to determine the aims of the Curriculum Content Review. Really came down to one big question which we posed, which was, what does a clinical scientist need to be able to do on day one on the job? And we aimed to answer that question in redeveloping the curriculum. So the first part of that process was to appoint a lead editor. So Rob stepped forward to act for microbiology. Rob then brought together a curriculum review group of expertise across the board, and it was that group, pen to paper, to draft the curriculum. That then went out to stakeholder review, so you might remember that a couple of months ago. That was your opportunity to have a look at that curriculum and give any comments and feedback that you wish to. Takes us to the here and the now today, launching the curriculum for you. And moving forward, that takes us to next September 2023, when that curriculum will go into delivery. So just to let you know, if you did input to that stakeholder review, our response to that is now available on the curriculum review tracker. That's available through our website. So you'll need tab 5, where we've published our response, so you can see how your feedback shaped the final curriculum. We are now, I'm very pleased to say, on a tab 6, which is specialty complete, so you can have a look there. And thank you to everybody that fed back through that process. The really important thing I need to say this morning is a huge thank you to everybody on that curriculum review group that undertook this work. So firstly to Rob as lead editor of this group, and to everybody that sat on that curriculum review group. So Chris, Darren, Elaine, Felicity, Hannah, Harry, Jane, Kate, Lisa, Michelle, Tanya, Vicky, and Zoe. thank you so much for all your hard work through this process. So I showed you that diagram a second ago about how we kind of got to this point of launching the curriculum, and it all looks very nice and straightforward. We had a first face-to-face meeting with the curriculum review group back in February 2020. I'm rather interested to see many of you in the review group were actually following the beginnings of just something that was happening on Twitter, actually, which was very prescient. And obviously some things happened after that. You got very busy just dealing with a pandemic. We managed to come back to the table and continue the review earlier this year. So it has been an absolutely phenomenal effort from the group to pull it together in a really short space of time to get this curriculum ready for you. And I do have to say that we're only launching it now because I've been slow, not because the group have been slow. It was just tremendous work. I always say that it's just an absolute pleasure to work with these groups, and I think this has been absolutely no exception. It can be tiring, it can be challenging, as it should be, but it always is an absolute pleasure to work with you on these curricula, to see the dedication, the hard work, and the passion for your specialties, and to see all that come out in these groups and go into these curricula is a truly amazing experience. There's always something I learn, and we'll leave the fungal nails aside of this time. But I think in this case, I think Rob's example of just calm, compassionate and collaborative leadership has really stood out for me, and it's been a wonderful experience to work with the group. So thank you to everybody who was involved in that. I want to hand over to Bernie now, just for a moment, to say a few words on behalf of the school as well. Bernie, if you're ready.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much indeed for coming today. I just want to say that I've been following this very much in the background, and I want to say a huge thank you to Chris and Rob for leading this group, but also to reiterate what Chris has said to all of you who helped with this. And I'm pretty sure even if you weren't involved, intimately with the group, you probably had input in other ways. So thank you so much. As a professional myself, I just know how hard you all have been working. In fact, I don't really know how hard you guys have been working during the pandemic, but I can only imagine. I just want to say I'm delighted, and the school is delighted that it's done. Clearly, you would have been with everybody else, but the little thing called the pandemic got in the way, and that definitely delayed you. And I just want to thank you on behalf of certainly all of us in the school, all healthcare scientists, but also on behalf of the country, really, because I know that the reason that you guys couldn't do this was because you were just up against it. And thank you very, very much for that. You deserve medals, all of you. And I just know how hard you've had to work. I don't know in detail, but I know how much time you all had to put into kind of helping the country get rid of that, the really kind of areas and the really dangerous periods of the pandemic, particularly early on. So thank you very, very much indeed. I really mean that. But what you then did once the pandemic was over, you just immediately got back to it again. You picked it up and you ran with it. And as you've been hearing there from Chris, she has loved working with you guys. So thank you very much indeed. And to any extent that it's now done, I hope you're happy with it. I really do. I mean, I know from the work that Chris has done and that you've done, that what we've been trying to do with all of the new curricula is make them very flexible, so that, anytime you have to go in and change, because you're in a rapidly moving field, and anytime you need to go in and change it, it'll be much, much easier to do now. We will never have to go through this major whole curricula review. It's not as major as we've all been doing. So I think that that's, a huge achievement in itself. And so congratulations. I hope you are happy with it. I hope you will enjoy the new trainees when they come onto it and you start looking after them. And I hope it sees you well into the future. I really do. And so that's really all I have to say is thank you so much for doing this work, but for also all the work you did during the pandemic. Good luck in the future with this curricula. And I hope it does you and your profession well. Thanks.
Thank you, Bernie. I'm going to hand over to Rob to talk about the science of the new curriculum, but first of all, just to take a moment to remember those who weren't able to take this journey with us. Over to you, Rob.
I hope you can see my slides. Yes, so thank you. My name is Rob. I've introduced myself. Thanks to Chris and Bernie for that very kind introduction. I just wanted to start with a mention of Moira. So Moira is was a friend and dear friend and colleague of ours, and we lost her suddenly and unexpectedly earlier this year. Moira was genuinely passionate about education and training of clinical scientists, and she did everything possible to support our trainees. She was on our professional committee for more than 20 years, and she was just always there. And she was also involved in the early stages of this curriculum review back at the beginning of the year with her usual enthusiasm, and she's going to be very, very dearly missed. So I think it's right that we just take a moment to remember her. So firstly, why was an update needed? That the existing curriculum was put together in a very, very short window back in 2011. And I'm very much prepared to acknowledge the flaws that it contained. It was a pragmatic piece of work, and it clearly needed updating. It's also right to acknowledge that the world of diagnostics and infectious diseases have moved on a lot. And we need to ensure that whatever we put together, we are training clinical scientists who are equipped to work in the future. It needs to be adaptive and it needs to be pragmatic. It's also, we've already mentioned that we're a year behind everyone else, so we can only apologise. We did it as quickly as we could, but as soon as we've had capacity to pick this back up and get back onto it, we did, and I'm very grateful for the team for doing so. So going through each of the three phases in turn, we think it's right that given that individuals who are entering STP have a wide range of previous experiences, so we have people who have just finished an undergraduate degree, who have never stepped foot in front of in a diagnostic laboratory, through to people who have got a decade or more of experience with PhDs and masters already. And we want to make sure that we give them a good grounding in what pathology is, how microbiology sits within it, and how we benefit patients. That's the key part for me. How do we link the laboratory science to the patient? And these rotations are designed to have a significant degree of flexibility built into them. And it's designed to allow the trainees to be exposed to a wide range of roles and disciplines, whilst highlighting some of the fundamental lab aspects, such as health and safety and policy management systems. So this is very much a grounding in from the very beginning. We move on to phase 2, where we need to provide a good grounding in commonly used laboratory techniques that are used in diagnostic labs today. And we thought it best to start by introducing these, by applying them to the most commonly seen sample types and body systems to get that really good introduction. And it's really important that the STPs understand test selection, pros and cons, limitations, interpretation and troubleshooting of these, because this is the basis of everything that we do. Further in phase 2, we wanted to look at aspects included by bacterial, viral, parasitic and fungal infections. In the previous curriculum, parasites and fungi were kind of bolted on at the end of it, and we wanted to make sure that we looked at this holistically. And we're using examples of these in common infections and common body systems. We've also focused on those commonly used methodologies, and you'll note that from this new curriculum, we've removed outdated methodologies such as electron microscopy and cell culture, and we very much focus on the things that are used now and things that are going to be more commonly used going forward. So phase 3 aims to build on those clinical laboratory skills from phase 2 by applying them to other syndromes and body systems. And we're aiming to cover a wide range of infection types, but the vast majority of labs in the country will see all of these. So we want to give that breadth of cover. We're training generalists, someone who is a threshold clinical scientist who is able to be competent and ready for day one on the job, as Chris just said. The second rotation in phase 3 focuses on key patient groups and finds infection syndromes that are unique to them. And there's a lot of carryover here from the existing curriculum that shows that the existing curriculum, the old one, wasn't all bad. But very little of this has changed. I think the key thing to highlight in this one is that we've added the important addition of primary care. So primary care was minimally covered in the old curriculum, and it's now we realise that a vast number of our work, our sample load, and our inquiries come from primary care. So it's important that we give that the prominence that it needs. And the final section in phase 3 covers infection prevention control and public health. And the current curriculum does cover these aspects, but I think this update makes it much clearer, where we highlight links of examples of how clinical diagnostic labs and reference microbiology services play crucial roles in infection prevention and control, public health, outbreak management, and emergency preparedness. And I think this begs into us preparing clinical scientists for the future. And there are competencies related to whole genome sequencing and the interpretation of typing data, and then technologies and the application of data is always advancing. And we need to make sure that the trainees that we that exit this after 3 years are equipped for whatever's coming down the track now, for what's next on the horizon. So that's a really brief overview of the 3 main phases and the main modules. I think we're going to have time at the end for questions. I'm very happy to talk through those. It's just for me to again thank everyone that's contributed. So firstly, thanks to Chris, who has been incredibly patient with us as a team and has kept the show on the road. Massive thanks to the team who contributed in various stages of this and stuck to their deadlines and returned the work in the appropriate time frame. And they brought such enthusiasm and willingness to hear new ideas, because I'm sure you can appreciate there were lots of pragmatic discussions about the best way to present this. And it's a lot of stuff to fit in 3 years, and obviously not everything can make the cut. So I'm grateful for the team for coming there, bringing their expertise and their pragmatism to the table. And I'd also like to thank all those people that took time to go. A lot of really good, detailed, valuable feedback when it went out for peer review. So I'm very grateful for all of you who took time to send us that. While I do have a captive audience, I think it's appropriate while we're talking about novel technologies and what happens next. I'm going to leave this slide on the screen very briefly. Thanks to Bernie and Health Education England who are supporting us to put on this whole genome sequencing short course in the area of infection. We're due to launch April next year. It's going to be free for suitable people who wish to participate, and this QR code will take you to a link to on the ACB website where you can express an interest to be involved. So I'm very grateful to Bernie and actually for funding this. We think it's clearly an important area, and I think if anything, COVID has only accentuated that. So thank you again for your time. If anyone wants to get in touch with me about any of that, you're very welcome. I'm very easy to find, and I can get my details in the chat. But I'll hand back to Chris for the next session before the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm just going to talk briefly about planning for the new curriculum as well. So just to highlight some of the areas where things have changed, and I will cover, as Rob mentioned, the phases in there as well. So I'm briefly going to talk about who follows the new curriculum, where to find it, what's changed in the programme, and how to schedule training as well. So first up, the big question, who's going to follow this new curriculum? So any trainees entering the programme in September 2023 will start on this new curriculum. If you have trainees currently with you, or if you're a trainee yourself, you will continue on the curriculum that you are following to the completion of your programme. If anybody does take a step off the programme, we will look at those on a case-by-case basis in this transition period as well. So new trainees for 2023 will start on the updated curriculum. So secondly, where do you find the curriculum? I hope you know the answer to that by now, which is the Curriculum Library. You'll spot under the STP tab now there is a 2023 tab, and that's where your curriculum will be living, as I say, by itself for the time being, just to let you have a moment, and the remaining specialties will join you shortly. In the Curriculum Library, you can find all the information I hope you now expect to. So we have the overview page, which will walk you through all of the modules which comprise that updated curriculum. And under each of the modules as well, it will give you all the details that you will expect in each module. It should all look very familiar. You've got your module details, the aims, the competencies, the work-based assessments and the clinical experiences there, as well as the academic content as well. So briefly to cover what's really changed in the new curriculum. So in short, it's really everything and nothing. The curriculum outline, the modules, if not the titles, the way the programme is structured, the competencies, the work-based assessments should all look very familiar to you. Trainees still need to complete competencies, work-based assessments in the workplace, and they'll still be going to university at Queen Mary as well. So the overall programme should look very familiar. The biggest areas of change have been on the rotations, and I'll talk about that briefly, a little bit about the competencies as well, and the core modules. So I'll cover those briefly this afternoon. So first of all, as Rob mentioned, the rotations have seen a little bit of a change through this process, and this has been applied to all of the specialties. So what we've wanted to do is to encourage trainees to develop an understanding of the multidisciplinary team they're going to be working with, an understanding of the specialties and areas of practice that they're surrounded by, to give them an opportunity to network, to meet those people that they're going to be working with for the duration of their training and possibly beyond that. As Rob mentioned, to explore the patient pathway in the wider NHS. Where are they working? How are they working? And how do they fit in? And all of this builds on trainees' knowledge base for them to take forwards into the remainder of their training. So under the new model of rotations, we're asking for each rotation to be 4 to 8 weeks long. I'm going to try and do maths on the spot. I believe that's 20 to 40 working days, however you want to work that, but between 4 and 8 weeks long. The rotations, as they always have been, should be completed in the first year. Quite a difference here. We're going to ask trainees to reflect on experiences, and I'll talk about where you can find a bit more information about reflective practice in a moment. There's also a lot of consistency. You will spot that the rotations are a variation of a theme, and this theme has been shared across all the specialties. So we're asking trainees to undertake a number of experiences in different environments to build up their picture of that great big blue NHS that we all work in. So just briefly to run you through the rotation learning outcomes, and as I say, you'll spot these are a variation on a theme. We want to ask trainees to explore the contribution of clinical microbiology to patient care, identify roles and relationships of the multidisciplinary team, look at working practices, have a little look at innovation and what's changing in your practice, look at the legislation and what guides you, as well as comparing and contrasting that with other specialties practice as well. So just to talk about competencies briefly as well. The competencies should still look very familiar. This is a thing that we're going to ask the trainee to do, task that they have to complete. What we have tried to do in updating the curriculum is write the competencies in plain English. We hope they should be very clear about what we're asking the trainee to do. There may be multiple ways that the trainee can complete the task, depending on trainee preference, what's accessible to you or your local practice. We hope it's clear about what we're asking the trainee to do. Under each competency, you will now find something called considerations. So previously, knowledge and understanding, we've updated this section to considerations. It's really hard for me to describe this section without just keep saying consider and over again, but I'm going to give it a go. So this section gives a little bit more information for trainees on the main themes of the task that they're being asked to do. You've got one of the core competencies on the screen there. So it's just running through the main themes that a trainee should be considering when approaching this task. This is primarily designed for trainees. As a trainer, you might want to have a skim through these considerations, as themes are very similar in the more technical aspects of the curriculum. You might find they're quite similar, however, they have been written bespoke for each of the competencies. So this isn't a directive list. Trainees aren't expected to hit every point on this list in providing their evidence. It's to give them a starting point about the things that they need to think about. They might find in the task they're undertaking that not everything on this list needs to be considered. They might find that there are other things on this list that need to be considered when the trainee is undertaking the task. It's just to set them off in the right direction. The best example I can kind of give is that when I learned to drive, I had to say mirror signal maneuver and over again. And as experienced professionals, you will have a list of things in your head, an innate list of things that you will do every time you undertake a particular task. And it's to help trainees absorb that knowledge, just to get them started in their thinking around each of these tasks. I'm going to move on to talk briefly about the core modules. So what I will do at the end of this is give you some links for some webinars that we did. We did one covering the core modules, one covering rotations, one just in a little more depth on these introductory principles of the new curricula as well. So those are just half-hour webinars that you can drop into online when you've got a few moments if you want more information on any of these areas. So the core modules have also been updated. You still have 4 modules. Professional Foundations of Healthcare and Clinical Science, that is still that overarching module, though the name's been updated, that will take trainees through all of their professional skills. You have the Research Skills module, which will prepare trainees to undertake their STP project. We've updated that name, that is the research project, as was, now called the STP project, just in recognition that trainees aren't always undertaking what we would consider classical research as part of that project. You will spot there are a couple of competencies in each of those modules as well. Those are really aimed at sharing information between the academic and the workplace arena when undertaking that research. I'm going backwards now, undertaking that STP project. We're not asking for trainees to do 2 projects. I just want to make that really clear. It's about sharing the knowledge across the board. So depending on how I have to say, I'm not sure how Queen Mary works actually, but some of the projects are done very much in an academic environment, some are more based in their workplace. It's just making sure we're sharing the knowledge across those 2 areas. The final module of the core module I just want to dwell on for a moment is the individual professional development module. So this is an updated opportunity for trainees to undertake some continued professional development. So you can see the learning outcomes there. This module is now very much aimed around continued professional development. All of the other elements of the curriculum are designed to give you a trainee who is able to do the job on day 1, as we've discussed. But we'd also like them to continue to do that job as a clinical scientist and continue their registration as well. One of the things you need to do for that is continue professional development. This is an opportunity for trainees to start doing that early in their training. This is quite a flexible, quite an open module. There are no time constraints on this. There is no time when this has to be undertaken. And it's all about the trainee identifying an experience which is suitable for them to undertake. If you do have some guidance in your department about CPD and how that should be looked at, how that should be considered, it might be worth considering that when your trainee is approaching this module. So just the final thing I want to talk about today is how to schedule training. And I'm just going to talk about that word that Rob introduced, the phases of training. So we still have a 3-year program. Trainees enter year 1, then move on to year 2, year 3. The end of the program, and they'll undertake phases of training. So your phase 1 of training is your rotation modules. Each module is given assigned a phase. You can find those in the curriculum library. They say the rotation modules are phase 1, and your specialist modules move on to phase 2 and 3. You'll be able to see that in each of the module details as well. So if you're looking in the module, it will tell you which phase that module is as well. So it's really there to do 2 things. The first is to guide you through training. So we've really had the opportunity in updating the curriculum to look at taking trainees on a learning journey from day 1 on training to day 1 on the job. So we've designed this curriculum to take trainees on that journey and walk them through and develop the skills that they need to along the way. So your phase 1 rotations, it's a relatively simple concept. Your phase 1 rotations, phase 1 modules are your rotations. Approach those first, move on to your phase 2 modules, And then finally completing the phase 3 modules and building that skill set as trainees go through. The second reason we've introduced phases, rather than just simply calling them years, is to give you permission to move things around a little bit in the training. So with the updated guidance that a rotation can be 4 to 8 weeks long, 4 rotations, even with some attendance at university, if you're being generous enough to allow your trainees some holiday and some leave, and just generally getting settled in that first year, it's still very possible to complete all of your rotations within that first year of training, which means you've got a little bit of time left over. So your rotations might look like this. They might look a little bit more like this. You might do your home rotation first, or the most suitable rotation first, move on to the remainder at the end of the year. You might have some gaps in between, as I say, 20 working days if you want to split that across the year, whatever is working best for you and your rotation hosts. However, if you've got some time left at the end of year 1, then you are very welcome to move on when your trainee is ready to your phase 2 modules. So that means it's entirely possible that a trainee might be working on a phase 2 module within their phase year. A phase 2 module within their first year of training. Again, if you're able to bring things forward, your trainee may be able to work on a phase 3 module in their second year of training. So it's permission really to start to bring things forward through the training. We know it's 3 years. We know it's a very busy training course. So your training might start to look a little bit like this, might start to look a little bit like this. I will just add that while our phases don't have an official start time, they do have an end period. So the end of your phase is the end of your year. We are going to start using this a little bit more in progression monitoring in the future. So you need to make sure you have finished your phased modules by the end of the year. So that's your phase 2 modules by the end of the second year, and as you might continue to expect, your phase 3 modules by the end of the program. So yes, so just to highlight, sorry, I lost my train of thought there terribly. Just to highlight, there are a couple of modules in the core curricula that don't have a phase on them, that professional foundations module and the individual professional development module. So that is because they should be approached throughout the training. There is no official time for those to be started or finished. I would recommend in the updated curriculum getting stuck into that professional foundations module really early on in training. There is, as I say, another webinar looking at that in a little bit more detail if you want to check that out. But I think if you're leaving the professional foundations towards the end of training, that is going to cause you a little bit of trouble in the long run. So have a look at that with your training nice and early on. So just to mention the future of the STP curricula. So we have your curricula ready for you. And as has been mentioned before, we hope it will live a long and happy life with you. Been written in a slightly different way, so we hope it will age more gracefully with you. However, the plan is to keep looking at these as well and make sure they are keeping pace with you and the change of your practice and the speed in which you are updating your science. So we'll be looking at those continuously, and I hope to have a little bit more information on that in the future. So I just want to run through what you need to do now. So the commissioning process for to host a training for September 2023 is going on very much as we speak. So you will not know right now if you're going to be hosting a trainee in 2023. But I'd suggest you have a look at that 2023 curriculum, get yourself familiar with it. Start to have a look at those rotation modules and make sure you're comfortable with them. There may be some new relationships that you need to make in order to fulfill those relationships. You might want to start having those conversations. Accreditation will be in touch with you once you've confirmed you're going to have a trainee in 2023 to update your training plan, and they will be in touch with you. So there's nothing you need to do right this second other than get yourself familiar with the curriculum. So there is lots more information out there for you. I think actually what you've done is very wise in that you've let all the other specialties test the waters for you so you can learn from their experience. As I mentioned, we have 4 lunchtime update webinars. They're available on our website. They're just half an hour each, and they look at some of the areas of most change in a little bit more detail. So as I say, the rotations, the core modules, these a little bit more of an introductory module, and there is a 4th one, which I can't for the life of me think what it covers right this second, but they are on our website. There's lots of information on the website as well. Again, it does say guidance for working with the 2022 curricula, but it still equally applies to you in 2023. We are going to collate all of this information and send it out to those of you who are training officers this afternoon. I know you've received it once already, and now you're a little bit more ready for it. So that will be coming to you later today as a resource to all this further information. I think the most important one I should mention is the drop-in sessions, which we host every month. So that's myself, TPD colleagues and colleagues from accreditation. It really is what it says on the tin. It's a drop-in session. It's kind of an open office hour. We're available online for the duration of that hour. There'll always be somebody there online to talk to you during that hour, so you can pop along and ask any questions that you want to. We don't present, there's no information, you're not missing anything if you're not there, so come with your questions. We would prefer if they were about curriculum. We can't promise to solve all your questions about life, the universe and everything. But we run those every month, and we'll continue to do so into next year. If you walk away today and remember, realise there's a question or something you've not quite understood. So, speaking of questions, I think that's all from me today. So I'm very happy to open the floor to any questions that we have. Katie, is there anything in the chat?
Just if the slides are going to be made available.
We'll make the webinar available on the website. We'll get the recording up there fairly shortly. So I'll stop sharing those slides, speaking of which, but we wouldn't intend to make the slides available immediately because all of the information is in other places.
There are no other questions at the moment.
In that case, I'll open it to the room if anybody does want to ask anything. If you pop your hand up and we can allow your microphone. It's very quiet. Perhaps we have covered everything.
Everyone's happy.
I hope so. As I say, you do have opportunities to pop back and ask questions at those drop-in sessions if you want to. So if that's just a bit too much information to take in at once, then you are welcome to come back to those sessions or drop us an email at any point as well.
And I'm happy to reiterate, so yes, if you've got issues or questions about the structure of STP and modernising scientific careers entirely, please do go to the school first. If you have specific issues about training microbiologists, part of our remit as the ACB Microbiology Professional Committee is to support you to train trainees. So please do reach out and ask. We can't do everything, we can't fix everything, but if there's anything we can do, we will absolutely do our best to do so. So please do reach out and speak to us.
Thanks, Rob. So well supported on both counts there, I hope. I think we've got a question from Alice there. Bear with me, Alice, and I'll pop your mic on for you. There you go. You should be able to talk now.
Hi. I was just, it may seem like an odd question, but obviously you're working towards a clinical scientist. Is there a job description for a clinical scientist in microbiology, or are there example contracts or job plans or anything available?
So there isn't a recognised generic job description because the STP scheme is designed to train a generalist who's ready to work as a qualified clinic. It used to be a very unsatisfactory term of a minimally competent clinical scientist, which is now called a threshold clinical scientist. We're taught you the basics of what you need to do, and then you're on to the next step. So as a qualified clinical scientist, the breadth of roles that they could be doing is really broad. So working in a reference laboratory, focusing on the minutiae of an individual bug that focuses on an outbreak response versus working in a busy diagnostic lab, phoning out results, validating tests. I think as a community, we can pull together some generic examples for you, and we can try to anonymise them and share them with you, Alice. But there isn't a generic one that says, you know, every clinical scientist will fit within this box. But
So there's
I'm
a
happy
sort of
to,
DGH clinical scientist in
yeah, I
microbiology.
think we could help you pull something together. So I could we can chat offline, and I can definitely get a couple of examples to you.
That would be good, because we don't, I think, have anyone working in a sort of mainstream, not specialist laboratory in the NHS in my area as a clinical scientist in microbiology. So it's been a bit of a struggle, because we're sort of having to start from the beginning. So it'd be really good if we could see what they do in other places.
Certainly, no problem. Yeah, drop me an email, Alice, and I'll get something back to you as quick as I can.
The next question we've had is there a similar session for HSST trainees?
There isn't at the moment, no, because we haven't made any changes to the HSST curriculum. So this is very much focusing on the STP because that curriculum has been updated. There are other sessions about HSST in general, though, and it definitely be worth a look on our website if you are interested in HSST. Though I believe we have also the expert on the room. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Rob?
Yeah, we haven't planned any sessions. I mean, I'm always happy to take calls and emails. I'm just putting my email address in the chat for you. If you've got specific issues, we at the ACB can definitely help out and advise. It's whether we think there's enough broader need for us to host a broader meeting, which we can host at the ACB. We can definitely think about that. So if anyone thinks it would be helpful, I can always liaise with the national school, excuse me, and host them. You can send us your queries in advance, then we can make sure we tailor it to whatever's needed.
Yeah, so the next question was just if they could have your email addresses. So if you could just pop them into the chat if you're happy to share them, people can pick them up from there. And then that's all the questions at the moment.
Thank you. So yeah, I've popped, it's our school curriculum inbox. I've popped that in there, and you can always reach out to the school as well. So as I say, a bit more information from us coming your way this afternoon. And I know that the ACB are always happy to help you on the more scientific side of things as well, as Rob said. So unless there are any more immediate questions, I think we'll let you all have a little bit of time back this afternoon. Got any hands shooting up? So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.